everyone, Comic Reviewer here, once again doing another comic review, and this one is going back on The Brave and the Bold, issue 200, which is meant to feature the second story to give the introduction to what happened to Brimestone after the events years ago back in Batman's Earth 2 history. And keep in mind that a couple months ago I did review the first part, so going to review the second part. We see how a car pulls up, with a doctor saying, "Alright, I'll need to see some ID. Good evening, Sam." "Oh, sorry, Dr. Lincoln, I didn't recognize you." "I mean, nice, right?" So we see how Dr. Lincoln is tasked with the warden in giving a special serum that can bring back Brimstone. And we see him now as an old man, and keep in mind that 28 years ago, he was defeated by the Earth 2 version of Batman and Robin, and is shocked at how old he's been and how long it's been. And he wants to get his revenge on Batman, and we see how Joker gives him the newspaper saying, "Unless you're got a terrific collection agency, have you read a read? It's cold off the press." And of course, back in a DC comic, Batman tragically died in the hands of a son of a criminal. And we see how Brimstone's now old and defeated, but remembers seeing his Earth 1 counterpart and decides to channel his mind into the Earth 1 version. We see how Dr. Lincoln and the others figure out what's going on, and we see how Brimstone begins his path of destruction to to churches, basically to shops and that, as well as to synagogues and that. And of course, we see how Commissioner Gordon tries to keep the rioters and even looters under control, and we kind of see how Batman sees the bat signal and goes out as Batman. And we see how he meets with Commissioner Gordon, finding the first clue from the sort of bomber. And we see Batman saying, "Not the world, Commissioner, just the people in it. I'll be in touch. Thank you, Batman." And of course, we see him heading off, and we see how Alfred prepares the food, and even Bruce Wayne does some investigating and figures out where the chemicals and that came from, and goes out to sort of stop the bomber. We see how Batman sees how everyone's fighting and pillaging, and we know Batman wants to help but needs to sort things out. Of course, he suspects that Nicholas Lucian, who's the Earth 1 counterpart of Brimstone, is behind it but has some doubt. Goes in to investigate, but ends up meeting Brimstone's army of gangs who try to take him on. And we see how Batman takes them all on and making quick work of them, and saying, "With a little boxing of my own design." And of course, we see how Brimstone mentions that one of his henchmen has a clue, so Batman has to figure out where the next analysis is, and finds one in the pockets of one of the knocked out gang members, and finds it in an old place which he had membership of, but finds out that Brimstone's trapped the place and plans to trap Batman in a pit of lava when he plans to bomb the news broadcast station with the people who are trying to keep the rioting under control. And Brimstone saying, "It's taken 28 years, Batman, and it's worth every day of it." And of course, we see how Batman has to try and figure out what to do, and we see how Brimstone, as well as his Earth 1 counterpart, try to fight for control, with Lucian saying, "Leave me up, user, this is my life. You have no right." And of course, we see how the camera goes off with a big explosion. And of course, we see how just as Brimstone's about to press the button, we see Batman knocking him out, saying, Don't even try, Brimstone, or Lucian, or whatever you call yourself. And the broadcasting goes without a hint, and Batman knocks down Brimstone. And of course, figures out what he did, and noticed the mention about the gunpowder, which he managed to use the wiring in that to give him an easy advantage. And of course, Brimstone is gone, and Lucian comes back to normal, saying, "Where am I? Batman, what are you doing here? I remember a feeling of being caged, a prisoner in my own mind, but now I'm free." So they have to take Lucian to get some help, and after that, we see how at the end, Brimstone is now in a sort of coma again, and Batman believing that Lucian was a victim of something, but leaves off saying, "I don't suppose I'll ever really know what went on. I only know that I feel like I've placed my greatest challenge, and I won." And this is the story. So I think this one isn't too bad, but I think if they had the Earth 2 Robin show up to sort of see Brimstone come back, and then try and find a way to go on Earth 1 to give a sort of old, nostalgic view of the dynamic duo again, as I felt Dick Grayson or Huntress would have been there to sort of see the sort of after effects from Brimstone's coma. But I think the story is still good, so it still deserves a thumbs up. Still good, and still alright. So, Comic Reviewer here, signing out.